So a couple of weeks ago, there was a Twitter conversation about this guy who had worked for 25 years, contributing to the Kenyan statutory pension scheme, the NSSF. And after 25 years of working, contributing around maybe 200 bob in NSSF, he was expecting less than 100,000 worth of pension savings. If that is not crazy to you, I really do not know what is. In today's episode, I want us to talk about retirement planning and what exactly it takes to retire comfortably. I've been having conversations with 20-year-olds, 30-year-olds who feel like retirement planning at their age is a bit far-fetched, like I have better things to do than to think about retirement. But you will soon discover or realize that when you run the numbers, the best time to start retirement planning and saving towards that was yesterday, okay? So welcome to another episode of Finance Friday. My name is Coach Susan. As per usual, I'm very happy to have you here today. So what exactly is retirement? Like, what does it actually mean, financially speaking? Retirement is not an age, it is a financial state. Okay, because you can still get to retirement age, you're 55, 60, 65 and still be broke. So it's not really an age, it's a number, it's a financial state that you get to where working is optional because the investments that you made during your work life are enough to actually sustain you throughout the month and in perpetuity for that matter. Okay, so working becomes optional. I can choose to work, I can choose not to, but even if I don't work, my mandatory bills and expenses, my day-to-day running expenses are taken care of from passive income because of the investments that I made during my work life, okay? So retirement is not an age, it really is a number. That's why we are seeing people able to retire at 35, people are retiring at 40. It's no longer an age, okay? That's the first thing I want to get out of the way. The second thing that I want to get out of the way is that retirement, or rather that pension, it's about money, like this lump sum money that I have, 30 million, 40 million. It's not about money, it's about income, it's about cash flow. Because when you're retired, the most important thing that you need is actually cash flow, money coming in. Why is that important? Because you want to ensure that you have a sufficient income replacement ratio. What does that mean? Let's assume that right before I retired, I was earning maybe 100,000 or 150,000. An income, a good income replacement ratio means that my investments or wherever my money is coming in is giving me that same equivalent. Like as an employee or before I retired, I would earn 150 either from my employment income or from my hustle. 150,000. So for me to have a good income replacement ratio, I need to have investment income or cash flow that can replace the 150 that I used to earn comfortably, which means that the 150 that would come from my employment income is now coming in 150 or maybe 130 or even more than that, like 200,000 coming in from the different avenues that I had put in place before I retired. So I hope we understand exactly what retirement is and that it is a number, it's not an age, that it's about cash flow. Okay, now if you're an African or if you're, I think a lot of this happens in African communities, African American communities where black tax is a phenomenon. I don't know whether you've seen this. It's very rampant in my country, Kenya, because we are seeing our parents retiring, or rather getting to retirement age, and people now have to think of how we're going to take care of their bills, how we're going to take care of medical care, how are we going to, sustain them? And most of us do not realize that our parents or ourselves will probably have even sometimes longer post-retirement years than our work life. So let's assume I've worked for 25 years and I retire at 30 and maybe die at 90. I retire at 60 and maybe die at 90. I have 30 years post-retirement where I have to figure out, okay, now that I'm no longer employable or pensionable, where is money coming in to sustain my living for the next 30 years? So black tax is a big issue, and I believe one of the reasons black tax is a big deal is because we do not actively think about retirement as early as possible. So today, I just want to give you guys, I want us to do some math, okay? So get your calculator out, your notebook. I want to just guide you through setting a goal for your retirement savings. That's all today's episode is all about. Like, if I want to know what it will take for me to retire comfortably, it's not a financial goal if there's no number attached to it. So we want to get that number, okay? So step number one, when you want to get to your retirement number, or what we are calling your financial independence number, you need to determine what your total monthly income, or rather your total monthly expenses are, or your total monthly income. Okay, why is that important? That is important because if I'm trying to save for retirement, I need to ask myself, okay, when I'm retired, what is this monthly number going to be? So there are three ways you can go about it. Either determine what your total monthly expenses are, or determine what your total monthly income is, or determine when I'm retired, what will I need on a monthly basis? What will these expenses look like? Okay, so for the purpose of this example, I will work with my let's say, like, if I'm working with me, I'm working with my current monthly expense. So I'm going to be using 70,000 shillings, 70k for the purposes of this example. So let's assume my monthly income or my monthly expenses amount to 70,000. Okay, so let's work with 70k. So whatever the number is for you, you can do 70,000, 100,000, 200,000, whatever your monthly expenses amount to. That's step number one. Now, guys, are you realizing that you wouldn't necessarily be able to know what you need if you don't even have a budget? If you don't know exactly how much you're spending on a monthly basis? That's where it starts. It's one of the reasons why I don't think I'll ever do a video on here, and not to mention the importance of actually having a budget. Now, I do have a legacy budget tracking template. It's a done for you Excel sheet that will help you to see how exactly a budget looks like. It has the different categories, the needs, the wants, savings, investments, projects, debt repayments. So if you don't already have a budget and you want to get a template, I'm going to link the legacy budget tracking template in the description box, just so that you can do the first step, like, what exactly am I spending on a monthly basis? So that's step number one. Okay, then we have step number two, determining what your annual income is. So obviously you're going to take what your monthly or rather your annual expenses are. So if my monthly expenses are 70,000, then my annual expenses are 70,000 times 12, which will give me 840,000. Okay, so you want, in other words, to determine, okay, my monthly expenses, then step number two is to determine what your annual expenses are. So your annual expenses are your monthly expenses multiplied by 12 months. So in our example, that would amount to 840,000 per year. Okay, so you want to take your annual expenses and multiply that by 25. Now, we are not multiplying by 25 because we are assuming 25 years post-retirement. This is just a rule of thumb, a financial rule of thumb. You see, like how we have the 50-30-20 budgeting rule, we now have this formula that is here to help us determine what our retirement savings target should be. So my annual expenses multiplied by 25. Now, you can look into that, or you can also look into what we call the 4% rule. Now, where the multiplying by 25 comes from is we are looking at what is called the 4% rule. It is one of the rule of thumbs of determining how much money you would need to save or have in investments to help you retire comfortably. And the 4% rule dictates that you can comfortably withdraw 4% of your retirement savings per year comfortably and in perpetuity. And here we are working with an assumption that where your retirement savings are earning a minimum of maybe that 4% or 5% return per annum, which means that I can comfortably withdraw 4% from my investments on an annual basis comfortably and in perpetuity. Because remember, we are saying that we need to be able to live off of our investments. Okay? I hope you're still together, all right? So we've said calculate what your monthly expenses are, multiply that by 12 to get what your annual expenses are, then multiply that number by 25 to get how much you should actually have invested so that you can retire comfortably. Now, if we are working with my number, I had 70,000 per month, 840,000 per year. If I multiply that by 25, I should ideally have 21 million worth of investments that are earning me a minimum of 5%. If I can get there, I can live off of my investments in perpetuity. Now, I want you to take a moment, run the numbers. Let me know in the description box exactly what your financial independence number is. That is ideally on the bare minimum what you would need in investments to be able to live off of your investments if we apply the 4% rule. Okay, now the third step after you've gotten what your tentative financial independence number is, I'm really curious to read what it is on in the comment section. You guys let me know. So for this person, it's 21 million. How many millions is it for you? So once you've been able to do that, there's this thing we cannot ignore, which is inflation. I've already done a video on inflation and how to keep up with inflation. I'm also going to link it in the description box below. So the agenda is this. Now that I've gotten what my financial independence number is, I cannot ignore the place of inflation. Okay, so this number that we've gotten, the 21 million, has not factored in inflation. Currently in Kenya, inflation is at 7%. So you want to use this is just remember, there's actually no perfect way to calculate this number. For me, I would work with a tentative. I would inflate this figure taking into consideration 7 to maybe even 10%, just to be safe. Like adjust the number for inflation so that like it makes sense. Okay, 25 years from now, if I'm factoring in 7% inflation per year, how much would this come to? So we are probably looking at more than 21 million in terms of how much I need in retirement savings or investments so that I can retire comfortably. Okay, so let's review the process again. Step number 1, we said determine what your monthly expenses are. Number 2, determine what your annual expenses are. Then multiply that number by 25 to get your actual financial independence number. Step number 3 is you want to adjust that number you've gotten for inflation. So depending on the country that you are in and the inflation rate, then adjust that number for inflation. There are a lot of calculators available online that you can use. Okay. Then step number 4, which is very important. Now, remember you've worked with 70K or 100K. These are your current expenses. But life is not fixed on stone, which means that if I add, let's assume I don't have babies right now and I have babies, expenses will increase. The quality of my life keeps improving, or it gets inflated, right? So that means that if I spend 70K this year, I probably will not spend that same amount of money, which is why it is important to stay reviewing and adjusting this number on an annual basis, because my expenses last year are not the expenses this year. So what does this tell you? That this financial independence number is not like a number that is fixed on stone. It is ideally supposed to serve as a guide. Are we together? It is supposed to serve as a guide to kind of like give you a rough understanding or an idea of what would I actually be working with if I would want to retire comfortably? So you want to keep adjusting that number as as your expenses change, as your family dynamics change. The more you earn, the more you spend. So that's one of the reasons I keep telling people it is doing a great disservice to yourself if you don't sit regularly to review and adjust your financial goals. Okay, now guys, that is the simple formula that you can use to calculate exactly how much you would need to retire comfortably. A disclaimer that maybe I need to put out here is that there's actually no perfect way of calculating this number or getting this savings target. What I've just given you is one of the rule of thumbs or one of the approaches that you can use, but we are not saying it's ironclad. We are also not saying it's the only way, but it's a good starting point to help you determine, okay, if I'm setting a goal to retire at the age of 35, or 45 or 50, what does this look like in terms of numbers? So for this person, let's call her Susan, she would need to now start figuring out, what can I do right now that by the time I'm 40 or 45, I will have 21 million worth of investments that I can live off of in perpetuity. You see, that way your investment goals become very clear now. You're not just saying, I want to retire early, I want to retire at 45. You have an actual tentative number that you're working with. So you would ideally be able to sit down and identify what a good portfolio would look like. How much of my money will go to short-term liquid investments, how much of my portfolio will go to long-term bonds, stock market investing, how much of it will go to my personal pension fund. All right, so this will really help you understand what you're working with and help you set very smart and quantified or quantifiable financial goals. Remember, we said that it is not a financial goal if there's no number. Rich is not a goal. How rich is rich to you? Is it 20 million? Is it 50 million? Okay, so when you say I want to retire comfortably, this is how to determine what exactly does comfortably mean. Is it 21 million? Is it 50 million? Is it 100 million? So once you know what you're working with, you can be able to work backwards and start making informed financial decisions. Now, I have a masterclass that I did, all right, on the different investment options that you are, you can consider. And it's a recorded version. It was a live class, but the recorded version is already available. So I'm going to be I'm going to be putting the link on the description box below, where you can actually access the investments masterclass, where I taught on the different investment options, how to set them up, and how to actually come up with an investment portfolio that will help you really get to understand what your investment journey should look like. If at all you're interested in personal finance coaching or sitting down with a professional who will help you to curate your own financial or investment portfolio journey, so that you can know, what is my starting point? How do I measure and track progress? I am a personal finance coach in that regard. So I'm also going to be linking putting down the link to book a consultation session or get one-on-one personal finance coaching with me in the description box. So if you're interested, there's gonna be a lot of stuff going on in the description box for this video. So just check it out. You should ideally be able to see the different options that you have in terms of starting your journey to actual financial freedom. Okay, so thank you so much for watching this video. Let me know in the comment section if it was helpful for you. I look forward to knowing what your financial independence number is. If you have any questions, feel free to ask them and I'll be able to respond to you. Remember to like this video, share it with your friends so that they can also know what their financial independence number is, and also subscribe so that you can be notified every time I post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you on the next episode of Finance Friday.